guys, we're going to look at factoring trinomials again, but this time a is going to be greater than 1, which remember that's going to be that coefficient out in front of x squared. So that's what we refer to when we say a. Remember, b is the coefficient in front of x, and then c is that constant out there that doesn't have a variable with it. And so a is going to be greater than 1, but we're going to have some plus and minuses. So the same rules still hold true. It's just that when we go to find those greatest common factors, where does that plus go and where does that minus go is kind of the tricky part. So here, let's look at our first example. So I'm going to find factors. Remember, I'm going to multiply a times c. So I'm going to multiply 3 times 6. So 3 times 6. That's going to give me factors of 18. And then I want to find factors of 18 that subtract. So remember, if the coefficient in front of, not coefficient, if the sign in front of c is negative, then that is going to tell you that the two factors are going to subtract. So the two factors of 18 are going to subtract to give you 17. So I have 1 times 18, 2 times 9, and then obviously 3 times 6. So from here we can see that 18 minus 1 is going to give you those factors right there is going to give you 17 when I subtract them. 18 minus 1 is 17. So now I come in and I fill in my box here. So I'm going to have, see, a goes here, so 3x squared, and then negative 6. So go ahead and keep that sign with it. And then you're also going to have, let's see, it's going to be a positive 18 minus a 1x. That's going to give you this positive 17 here that you need. So plus 18 minus 1. Fix that there. So now we find greatest common factor of each column and each row. So I'm going to find the greatest common factor of the left column is going to just be x, and the greatest common factor of the right is going to be a 6. And then from the top, we're going to have 3x and a 1 there. Now notice that I have 2 negatives on that bottom row. So this is actually going to be 3x minus 1. It's going to be a negative 1 there. So, and then the 6 is going to be the positive, because remember, when I have a negative sign in front of C, my two signs in my factors are going to be opposite. So I have x plus 6 times 3x minus 1. And this right here would be our two factors right there. So again, the only thing that kind of sort of changed here is that you have to pay close attention to that sign in front of C. Remember, that tells you if your factors are going to add or subtract together, and then you have to look and see where that negative sign goes within your factors here. All right, so let's look at our second example here. We have 4x squared plus 3x minus 10. So remember, I'm going to multiply my a times c. So I have 4 times negative 10, or 4 times 10, really. And then I'm going to find those two factors of 40, is a 4 times 10, that subtract to give me 3. So when I subtract the 2, they give me 3 there. So I'm going to come over here and have my factors of 40. So I have 1 times 40 and 2 times 20 and 4 times 10 and 5 times 8. 6 and 7 don't work. I finished up back going up with 8. So therefore I know all of those. When I subtract 8 and 5, I'm going to get a 3 there. So I'm going to have a positive 8 and a negative 5. So when I have 8 minus 5. So that's what's going to go inside my boxes here. So I'm going to have 4x squared and negative 10. And then I have my two factors, negative 5x and 8x. It does not matter where you put 5 and 8. That does not matter. So finding greatest common factor, the left column, I have an x. And the greatest common factor on the right, I'm going to have 2. Then greatest common factor of the top, I'm going to have 4x, and greatest common factor on the bottom, remember both of those had those negative signs, so that's going to be a negative 5. So then my two factors, I'm going to have x plus 2 times 4x minus 5. And here we go. All right, and so now we're going to have the last one we have 10x squared minus 11x plus 3. So notice I'm going to find factors of 30 that add. So 10 times 3 gives me 30 that add. So since this is a plus sign, I know that the two factors are going to add to give me 11. So I'm going to make sure that, so here's where it gets kind of tricky, especially with that whole like both numbers in here have a negative sign, because remember when my last coefficient or the sign in front of my C is positive, both factors are going to have a negative sign. So factors of 30, we'll look at here. And so we're going to have, let's see, 1 times 30, obviously, 2 times 15, 3 times 10, 4, 5 times 6 moving back up. So the two factors that I have are going to be 5 and 6. They're actually going to both be -5 and -6, because I'm going to add those two together. -5 plus -6 is going to give me my -11. So plugging that in, I'm going to have 10x squared and 3 here, and then I'm going to have a -5x and a -6x. So this is kind of sort of where the box kind of goes to, kind of fails you, I guess, a little bit, in that the negative sign. So you kind of have to remember that rule that if both of them, if that last sign in front of C is a positive, then both of them are going to have negatives. That will help you out a little bit. So greatest common factor left is going to be 2x. Greatest common factor on the right is going to be a negative or a -1, because both of them have to have a negative. And then greatest common factor on the top is going to be a 5x, and greatest common factor on the bottom is going to be a -3. And so I would have 2x minus 1 times 5x minus 3. That's the only time I can think of where the box kind of sort of, I guess, leads you astray a little bit, because you don't know what that minus sign. But if you can just remember that both of them have to be negative, then you can go on from there. So just some final notes here. Remember that ax squared goes in the top left-hand corner, and then top right-hand corner, bottom right-hand corner is going to be C. And then you're going to have B, I'm going to say B1x and B2x. Okay, get those two go there, filling that in. Now, remember that if C is positive, okay, then the B1 and B2 are going to have the same sign. And then if it's negative, B1 and B2 are going to have opposite signs. So one's going to be positive, one's going to be negative. So then obviously the if C is negative, then the larger factor takes the positive, and then the smaller factor takes the negative there, and kind of vice versa. If they have the same sign, then they will both take the same sign of the middle term. So I'm going to kind of go along with saying that they're both the same. So it's going to, if it's negative, so all this kind of continuous, so this will take this sign. Takes the larger. The larger factor takes that sign, and if it's the same sign, then it's the same sign of B. Also, remember, if it's plus, then that means your two factors are going to add together to give you B. Add 2B. And then if they're opposite signs, then they're going to subtract 2B. So they're going to subtract to give you B. So this is probably one of the most challenging things that you're going to learn. Algebra 1, you're going to continue this, and you'll see factoring way later on. I saw factoring even into college. So the better that you are now and the better foundation that you have now is going to help you way better in the future.